I hadn't bothered to take off my jacket yet because I wasn't sure how long I was staying. That was the truth. But I told myself it was because the house always felt chilly in winter, or maybe because I'd just come from the car and didn't want to fuss with it. But standing there in the doorway, with the familiar smell of food and furniture polish, I already felt like an outsider. Someone who might be asked when they were planning to leave. Didn't know they let dropouts in here, my dad said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look at me directly. It was one of those comments he perfected over the years, tossed into the room casually like an observation, as if it had nothing to do with me. A few of the relatives chuckled. Not everyone. Some people smiled awkwardly like they didn't want to be the only ones not laughing. I just nodded because nodding was always the safest response. Correcting him would have meant an explanation, and explaining in that house always felt like begging. I shut the door behind me and settled into a seat at the back of the room, near the end of the couch where conversations died. From there, I could watch everyone without being a part of anything. Plates passed around. Someone argued about parking. My aunt complained about grocery prices. It all sounded the same as it had years ago, back when I still thought being physically close to them would eventually make me feel like I belonged. I kept my hands folded, feeling the weight of the jacket resting on my shoulders. I learned long ago that if you made yourself small enough, people stopped expecting anything from you. Silence was easier than dealing with disappointment. The problem with being labeled early dropout, disappointment, wasted potential is that people stop updating their image of you. They don't do it out of malice, not always anyway. They just freeze you in the moment they decided who you were. And after that, everything you do after doesn't really matter. When I left school, no one asked why. They just nodded the way they did tonight, like my decision to leave confirmed something they already suspected. I didn't correct them then either. I just went to work. Then I worked more. Then I went home tired and didn't talk about it, eventually without any big announcement. The work turned into something else. But I never told anyone. My sister's husband, Mark, was sitting across from me, balancing a plate on his knee. He'd always been polite in a distant way, like you are with someone you don't expect to see often. He worked in finance, wore it well, crisp shirt, confident posture, and a voice that assumed everyone agreed with him. After a brief lull in conversation, he glanced over at me and asked, "So, what are you doing these days?" It wasn't a trap. That's what made it almost funny. It was a simple question. The kind people ask when they want to put you into a box so they can figure out how much attention to give you next. I work at Northline, I said. I didn't mention my title. I didn't say how long I'd been there. I didn't even explain what Northline did. I just named the company and waited. Mark stopped halfway through, bringing his fork to his mouth. "Northline," he said. "As in Northline Systems, yeah." He frowned just a little, his eyes narrowing. Not out of suspicion, just recalculating. He looked back at me like he was trying to remember something he missed the first time. The jacket, the seat in the back, the fact that I hadn't said much all night. "Oh," he said, his voice trailing off. Wait, the room didn't notice that. First, people were still talking over each other, laughing at whatever joke had just been told. But something in Mark's tone shifted. He put his plate down. "You're not consulting for them, are you?" he asked. "No." Another long pause. "Then what do you do there?" "I run it." The words fell out flat. I didn't raise my voice or look around to see who might be listening. I just said it the same way I would have said that I work late or that traffic had been awful. Mark's mouth opened and then closed. "You're my CEO?" he said, louder than he intended. That was the moment the room fell silent, not all at once, but in pieces. Someone stopped mid-sentence. A laugh got cut off too quickly. Chairs scraped, the silence spread like a ripple, reaching even the people who were still in the kitchen. I felt it before I saw it, the weight of everyone's attention falling, where it had never fallen before. Mark stood up suddenly, awkwardly, straightening himself out as if just realizing how he was sitting. I didn't realize. He stammered, looking at me with disbelief mixed with embarrassment. "I mean, I've seen you in meetings, obviously." "But it's fine," I said, and it really was. I didn't feel the need to save him. The truth didn't require me to defend myself. My dad cleared his throat. He looked at Mark, then at me, like he was trying to compare to completely different stories. "You're saying you own the company." "I don't own it," I said. "I run it." That distinction mattered to me, even if no one else really understood. Someone offered me a drink. Someone else suggested I move to a better seat near the table. My aunt asked what exactly Northline did. Questions came at me quickly, overlapping, eager, almost desperate. I stayed where I was. There was no rush of triumph, no feeling of revenge. What I felt instead was a strange emptiness. The power in the room had shifted, there was no doubt about that. But it didn't bring any relief, just clarity. I watched my father take it all in. He didn't apologize. He didn't brush it off with a joke. He just nodded slowly, like he was filing away this new information for some future date. I realized right then that this moment wouldn't change our past. It would only change how things were now. Mark hung around me for a few minutes, trying to get his footing back. He brought up a project I'd approved, a decision I'd made months ago. He was careful now, respectful in a way that was almost painful to see. At some point, my sister caught my eye from across the room. Her face wasn't filled with pride or embarrassment, it was more like surprise, mixed with the realization that she hadn't really known me. For a long time, that might have been the hardest part. I left earlier than I planned. No one stopped me. No one asked why. As I put my jacket back on, still unnecessary, still heavy, I felt lighter than I had when I walked in. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine, letting the quiet settle in around me. I hadn't come there to prove anything. I hadn't planned for the reveal. It had just happened because someone else had recognized my authority where they hadn't expected to and had named it out loud. I understood then that you don't need to use leverage to make your presence felt. That dignity can be reclaimed without a fight, without speeches, without anyone having to lose face. As I drove away, I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I'd finished something. And for the first time, that felt like enough.